Hi, everybody. I'm George Siegal. Thank you so much for joining me on this week's Tell Us How to Make It Better podcast. When I made my documentary film, The Last House Standing, after Hurricane Michael in 2018 and the big fires out in Malibu and Paradise, California, the same year, we went around and talked to the victims of the disaster and heard their stories and what they experienced afterwards. But we didn't get the whole rebuilding experience because we had to leave town and deal with that film. So I'm trying to go back and revisit what it's been like for some of these people. And the stories are just unbelievable in what it's taken for them to rebuild their homes. One of the people we spoke with back then was Sabrina Downing, whose house in Malibu, California, was burnt completely to the ground. And we did the interview on the slab where her house used to be. Now, a lot of time has passed since then, and they've had quite an experience getting things back together. So my guest today is Sabrina, and she's going to talk about what that road back to normal has been like. I'm George Siegal, and this is the Tell Us How to Make It Better podcast. Your home is probably your biggest investment, and every week we show you warning signs and solutions to help you protect it. Tell Us How to Make It Better is partnering with the Readiness Lab, the home for podcasts, webinars, and training in the field of emergency and disaster services. Sabrina, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Now, when we last were with you, we were standing on an empty, scraped lot where your house used to be, and a lot of time has passed. Tell us, from the moment we were there, and we were there obviously before anything had started to be rebuilt, what's this process been like for you?
Well, the process was super hard due to the fact that COVID hit. So it kind of made things a little bit delayed with meetings and progress of people coming out. So that kind of put a little damper in the situation. But overall, we worked through that, and we went through the permit process, which I think was probably the hardest process of all. That took approximately 18 months to do and get. And basically, we were just doing the like-to-like that we were building. And we did get to add 10%, which they gave us that option. And it would be supposedly more of a, expedited kind of situation. So we did that, and it still took quite a while. And we used the same footprints, and we did change things inside to our liking. But overall, the footprint was pretty much the same. And then the rebuild happened after we got approved for our permit, and that was an exciting process. We rented a house down the street, so we were pretty close to the rebuild, and so we were here quite a bit for that, seeing the progress, and that was exciting. It gave us something to do, especially with COVID, where people were locked down and you couldn't do anything. So we had somewhere to go, which would be coming to see our house built. And so I had a lot of time to think about things on my walks and in that journey, just brainstorming things of how to make things different, and and I think that that was great. And we actually, from start to finish, on our rebuild, it only took 8 months.
Now, a lot of people that we spoke with, Sabrina, the main problems they had were getting permits and with insurance companies actually paying the claim. The mayor of Malibu is still litigating over his insurance claim. So what was that process like for you?
Well, I think that it all depends on, we still had a mortgage. So we had to go through the mortgage company along with the insurance company. So we were only able to get a little bit out at each time from our mortgage company. So like our contractor would be say, okay, we need to get paid. I need to get paid every 2 weeks. That was the contract. And in order for us to pay him, the mortgage company had to release money for what has happened. So say if like you went in 2 weeks and he needed to get paid for like the flooring, and if they didn't see any progress, then they wouldn't be able to give you another payout. Then that would have been making the contract and all the building just completely like stale. Like we wouldn't be able to move forward. So the process, and then you have to have an inspector out to make sure things are going as planned and if things are progressing. But that was not able to happen. So I was the one that was the inspector. I had to go in and send, due to COVID, nobody could come to the house. So I had to take pictures and show that there was progress from week to week to week on my phone in order to get that. But on the other side of the we had Allstate insurance. And I think that there weren't many people in Malibu that had that, but we had been here for a long time. We were grandfathered in. And it was hard at first until they saw that it was a complete total loss. And once they saw that, then they were being a little bit better to work with. But the catastrophic agent that we got with was in New York, which was kind of hard because, we had to deal with, phone calls, which was different time zone. And so, it was really hard dealing with that. Plus then, she was paying the rental of our place that we were staying at. So it was a lot of phone calls and a lot of, with all that it was just very time consuming, but in the long run, it worked out. And
it's a miserable experience all around. I mean, it's really hard to put a happy face on it. But what's interesting is, the American dream of, pay off your mortgage. I think having a mortgage actually helped people because an insurance company is much less likely to fight a mortgage company than they are little old you and your husband. It's at least you have somebody on your side that has a vested interest in seeing the project get finished.
Right. So, you just had to battle both of those, it was just like this fine balance, that had to happen. And I was basically the one that was doing that, so it was a lot, it, like I said, it kept me busy, kept me on my toes. And, but, in the scheme of all things, I mean, we have an amazing house that we came back to 2 years, a little over 2 years from when it burnt down.
Now, my guest a few weeks ago was a gentleman who lives down in Naples, Florida, where Hurricane Ian flooded his house and he had to have his house rebuilt. And I asked him what he did to build it differently so it wouldn't happen again. And the answer was they didn't do anything. They just rebuilt. Did you do anything to make your house safer from fires?
Yeah, due to the code upgrades, everything had to be somewhat, fireproof, and all the materials that they use now are different, and we basically do have vegetation, not right completely, on the property. I mean, we do have grass. We went back with some of some of our trees actually stayed. I mean, the 2 palm trees that are pretty fire, they go up in fire. They lived in our front yard. They're pretty big. We kept those. And then we just added other vegetation, but pretty much it was just most of the materials that we used. And we have indoor sprinklers now. So that was the code that we had to have. So we used a lot of what that would have helped, I guess. Who knows if it would have like saved the house or not, but now that that's a regulation, we had to put them in. So, but basically besides that, there's nothing we really, I don't think did, any differently.
So how does that help you with your mindset now when we come up to, there's been a lot of rain in California this year, so there's been a lot of growth in the hills and everything's going to be really overgrown going into fire season. How does that make you guys feel security wise? Because there's always that threat. I grew up out there and we were always concerned. It wasn't a forefront concern, you kind of just laugh it off. You certainly wouldn't do that now. So how are you guys prepared? What's the mindset?
Well, I don't know, really. I mean, you're more aware of like, weather. I mean, my husband is a retired fireman. He fought the fire. We had water. We live in an area in Malibu where our water was not an issue. My husband hooked up to a fire hydrant. But he was by himself. So it's not like we had any resource. I mean, he did all he could. Now, if we had more manpower, meaning that fire department would actually, if they came, I think a lot of the homes would have been saved. But as far as what we did everything that we could at that time. And I don't think that is, it was just so random that, one house burnt and the other one didn't. And the only thing I can think of, our house was a little bit on the older side. We never remodeled. We were here, 20 plus years. The houses that did not burn near us, literally next door, were ones that actually had been remodeled. The outside paint, the inside, and they didn't go down. So there must have been something to the fact of that. Plus, this time we did close our eaves. So our eaves were open, and those are the type of things that if an ember gets in your roof, in an eave, then it smolders, and then that's what can start the roof, on fire. So that is one thing that we did. We closed our eaves to make that not happen.
Did you guys give any thought to like a spray foam thing where you could spray your house if a fire was coming? I know we featured that in the last house standing. I know those things aren't necessarily cheap, but did you guys consider that going forward?
Yes. So we have, our neighborhood is, we have a homeowners association. And so since our neighborhood lost quite a few houses, we set up a fire brigade and put money towards these boxes that are sitting on several different properties near fire hydrants. Now, these boxes have the foam in it, the spray foam that we could access to. They have hoses to hook up to the fire hydrant and the keys to make that happen. And people are being prepared. We have monthly meetings and get-togethers of practicing how to put out fires if that were to ever happen again. Our neighborhood's very hard to get to, one way in and one way out. So very likely that we probably would not have assistance unless we had helicopters come in. So, I mean, I would say that we would just get together and do what we could for as long as it's safe, and move forward that way. But yes, we do have, we are prepared a little bit more now.
Now, human nature is such that people like you who were clearly victimized by this, you're going to have one sense of heightened awareness and preparation. The people who missed it and dodged a bullet almost feel a little more invincible. Do you sense a difference among the people who were damaged versus the people who were not?
I do. it's a different, I mean, I get that people have PTSD from the whole experience, whether you have a burnout or not. But I think it is a very different feeling when you've had everything, that you lost everything. Um, a house, like I said, is a house, but a home is a home. And, you could always rebuild and make better. And which a lot of people like look at you like, well, at least you got a great house out of it and you got everything you wanted out of it and you made it the way you want. I'm like, yes, I get that, but it's the things that were in the house that you can't bring back. And I think that is what I'm experiencing, that's hard, opposed to people that didn't have that. When their house burned down, they still have their pictures, they still have their memories and memorabilia and stuff like that. And so there is a disconnect, I think, there with that.
Absolutely. There's things you just can't replace from a disaster, and
Mhm.
nobody wants that kind of disruption for as long as your life is disrupted. I mean, COVID was disrupting enough on its own, but now factor in what you had to go through. That's just, it seems overwhelming. Now, did you ever give any thought to moving somewhere else and just getting out of that area?
No, I mean, we love it here. Everybody was super supportive. It was amazing, the people that came out to help, get us back with clothing and shoes and just being there for us. It was just like an amazing feeling that support, regardless of like where you live, you just never know, but that support was there. And we love it here. And I don't, I mean, we've lived here so long and we've had a few encounters that there were fires nearby and we had to evacuate, but this was like the big one, so I don't think I have that that I would ever move anywhere else. No.
How could you explain the feeling when you wake up the day after your house burns down and you realize all that you're lost? Most people say, well, it's never going to happen to me. I think if they truly understand what you went through, they wouldn't necessarily need to have it happen to them to maybe wake up and do something about it. What would you tell people to wake them up and realize, hey, we need to be prepared for this kind of stuff?
I mean, most of the people that are know me and know what I went through. I think that they they know that they would like to be prepared, but I would say that you're never really prepared. Even if you think you're prepared, you're not, because it's out of sight, out of mind. I mean, unless you've experienced it, it's something that you would never think that, oh, I should have done that or I should have got that. And when you're in it and you're literally being evacuated within like minutes, your mind is just, you're not even thinking correct and you're like normal, and so all you want to get out is yourself and your family, and if you have pets, and that's what we did. And that's all I could say is that we're all alive, um we didn't have to suffer any of that. So yeah, I don't, it's really hard to say that for sure, to tell people that.
No doubt. Did your insurance skyrocket after this? Did they? Because a lot of people in Florida after hurricanes, man, it's tough to get insurance down here for a lot of folks. What's it like in Malibu?
Well, our insurance, like I said, was pretty amazing. And we, all the only thing that we did, our insurance didn't go up much except for the fact that it is a bigger house and it's brand new and everything's new. So we wanted to make our everything go up a little bit, for what our insurance was, because of the square footage was a little bit more, and then everything's new inside. So we did add more insurance to our policy. So we are paying a little bit more, but it didn't skyrocket, and they didn't get rid of us, which I think a lot of people that didn't have burnouts, that made claims, I heard they did drop them, but since we've had them forever, we've kind of like grandfathered in, like that didn't happen to us.
Sabrina, if you had one tip to give people so they could have some way of preparing at least better than what they're probably doing right now for any kind of disaster that might come their way, what would you tell them?
Well, I would tell them to go through their insurance policy and make sure they know exactly how much it would be for a full rebuild when there's a catastrophic loss. And then not only that, but then look at your contents of that amount, and if that is not correct, or that it needs to be you would need to add more insurance, I would do that. Just because of this day and age, everything's more money for building purposes and buying things. Everything's like so much more. And because we had lived here for like 20 plus years, so I wanted who goes back and looks at their policy to make sure that you're set if need be that you have to go through something like this.
Well, that's what people I think don't always realize. The number one goal that I've sensed with insurance, whether it's medical or whether it's with your house or your car, their goal is to find ways not to pay you if everything's not right. And you need to make it as easy as possible for them with documenting everything, understanding what you have, because if you don't, there's really nobody looking out for you, is there?
No, and that's one thing. If you have very precious things, that's one thing I didn't do. But maybe even if I did do it, it would have burnt. Is that go through with a video and go through your whole house of what you have, because when you have to write that list of everything that's in your house, like from 1 to 1,000, and try to remember how many like whatever jewelry boxes you had, how many rings you had, how many like necklaces, like it's down to that you have to write stuff down. And so I think a video would be great, but you got to make sure that you got to take that with you once you leave the house when there's a issue.
Absolutely. Well, hey, Sabrina, you were so gracious when we were out there right after the disaster, and I appreciate you coming on and sharing this now. And I wish you guys a success maintaining now a normal life and hoping not to have to deal with this again in the future.
Yes, definitely.
All right. Thanks, Sabrina.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for joining me today on the Tell Us How to Make It Better podcast. If you liked what you were listening to, please become a regular subscriber. Share the link with your friends and even leave a review. There's also a contact form in the show notes, and you can fill that out. If you have had an experience with recovering from a disaster, preparing for one, or just building or remodeling your house, please fill out the form and get in touch with me. And I'd love to share your story on the podcast. There's also a link to my film, The Last House Standing, and I'd love for you to check that out as well. Thanks again for listening. See you next time.